Active classes increase student learning. The literature on pedagogy across many, many disciplines, including ours, makes that very clear. Yet it's hard to develop class activities that engage students, that accomplish the learning outcomes that we want, both in terms of content coverage and in terms of developing student conceptual understanding. And it's hard in large classes to scale up the opportunities for students to have frequent chances to express their understanding and to receive feedback on that understanding. And that's the key to the learning that could take place. What's more, learning in active classes depends on the student. How do we motivate the student preparation before class so that students have the basic knowledge coming into class enough to learn from its application? Moreover, how do we motivate student effort in the activities themselves? In particular, how do we avoid that free rider problem where the less able students want to just sit back and watch the more able students go? I'm going to tell you about team-based learning, which is a class structure that makes it possible to maximize student learning in an active classroom. And then I'm going to talk about a set of resources that we've developed. Scott Simpkins and Mark Meyer and I are working on we're in the third year of an NSF-funded project on developing materials and spreading the word about team-based learning. So team-based learning harnesses the intrinsic interest in our subject, along with student concern about their grades, and very importantly, peer feedback, and you can read that into peer pressure to encourage student preparation before class and engagement in the learning activities in class. And how does this work? Well, a team-based learning class is typically broken up. My semester classes are typically broken up into 6 or 7 modules. Some people break them up into 4 modules, but anyway, you break your class up into these chunks. And the first moment of each module is actually the moment of highest student effort, and according to my students and my course design. Students come in to that module having read key materials or watched the videos or whatever other prep, listen to podcasts. You decide the prep as the teacher. I like to have students work with nonfiction texts since they're in need of developing that skill. Before class even starts, some people even do the individual class online outside of class. Students take a quiz, not just on facts, but the opening quiz in my classes brings students up to, if you think of Bloom's taxonomy, the application level. And then students, this has to be in class, take the team quiz, and it's either very similar or identical to the individual quiz. And students, right off the bat, have a chance to express their understanding and to receive feedback and to argue about how they get to the right answer. They quickly learn not to just vote, and I spend a fair amount of time in the early weeks teaching them how to work effectively in a group, which are key skills in the workforce as well. Students receive feedback from their peers. The team receives immediate feedback because I give the team quizzes using these if-at cards. I don't know if you've seen them. I've left handouts and bookmarks with links to both the starting point website and our module on that website. Anyway, these if-at cards are the team quiz instrument. They're like scratch-off lottery tickets. 4 points if they nail it in 1 shot, 2 points if they nail it in 2 shots, 1 point in 1 shot, and, well, they needed 4 shots. They didn't know it. But anyway, they all walk out with the answer. You don't have to grade anything. They get it right away. So there's that immediate feedback. I give students a chance to challenge bad questions. I haven't intentionally made a bad question, but that's probably not a bad idea. And then, I don't know if you know the time for telling literature. Students are ready for the professor's comments that can now focus on the hardest stuff, the stuff that if any team struggled with a question, I figure, okay, that's an area I need to address. That sometimes I move out of class via screencasts, and students want to know, right? They've worked on this problem, and we call that the readiness assurance process, and it really turbocharges your class. The students are prepared for what comes in a team-based learning module. Most of the class time in a team-based learning module consists of time spent on these applications. We call them AEs, Application X TBL AEs. The AEs, the best applications, are capable of eliciting comments from all the students. TBL theorists like big teams, 5 to 7. I've experimented. 3-person teams work pretty well in some settings. Anyways, it's typically they're big teams, and a good application exercise will draw out even the shy, less prepared students. The team-based learning applications follow a 4S framework. Larry Michelson at University of Oklahoma developed this pedagogy in the 70s, teaching business management classes, health professional programs across the country, across the world have adopted TBL whole scale. There's some of us doing it in economics. Whether you're doing TBL or just elements of it, the class activities that we've developed will help you and save you a lot of time for collaborative learning activities, any type of group activities. Anyway, the 4S framework is really important in TBL. Students work on a significant problem, and that's critical. Sometimes these problems are directly out of student lives. They always have students working on what economists actually do. What do? We diagnose what happened in the economy. We predict what's going to happen next. We evaluate trade-offs and various policies. That's what we do. It's exciting and interesting, and it's hardly ever present in a principles level course. And no wonder we don't see them in the intermediate level. But anyway, you can set students to work on these important questions. The computational and the quantitative work support students' choices over the possibilities in a well-crafted activity. The questions are designed so that students have to make value judgments in answering the question. Oftentimes there's missing information, or the questions can be designed to take advantage of what we know from our experience, our student misconceptions coming in. So you try to a good application exercise will elicit a variety of answers across the whole class, and students argue within the teams. They because of the value judgments, being technically proficient isn't sufficient to nail it. The significant problem is the key. One of the keys. Students in each team make a specific choice. I'll give you an example in a moment of what I mean by that. But their open-ended questions don't work so well. You need students to arrive at a clear, distinct choice that they then have to defend. I tell my students, look, I don't have a body of knowledge. I don't have truth for you. They're very disappointed in that. I want you to be able to participate in the argument. That's what we do as economists, give you the tools to participate in the argument. And team-based learning class gives students a lot of practice in doing that. And having the students make a specific choice makes their team's answer, readily comparable with the other team's answers. Each team is working on the same problem. This is critical because after the team phase, where students are working within teams to make a choice, I facilitate as an instructor the conversation across teams. This is where the skills needed to teach any active class really depart from the skills we've developed as lecturers, even interactive lecturing. We lecture in any active class. You've got to set up each activity. You've got to close each activity. This is your time in 8-minute segments or whatever, however short you can make your comments to keep all students paying attention. But facilitating that conversation among the reporters is a different skill, and it's fun, but it's a non-trivial task to shift toward active learning. I think that's why so few economists, probably not in this room, but across our profession, have done it. And finally, students report simultaneously. If you're collecting graphs, graphical analysis with maybe a phrase to make their choice, or points on a map, you can collect student answers as they finish, but the key is that they're simultaneous reveal, that there's a moment, usually it's with colored cards, where the team reporter that I choose actually after the team has finished their work. The team reporter has to get up and hold up a card announcing their choice. And hopefully you've got a dispersion across several of the possibilities. I don't tell the teams which reporter is on, because I noticed when I used to do that, that reporter would really beef up their skills for that exercise and then free ride otherwise. I don't have any points on the line for these application exercises. In other words, students can be wrong without penalty. They can be right without reward. The intrinsic interest is what motivates that class energy, and it's teaching with team-based learning is what I thought teaching would be coming out of grad school in the level of student energy, which is, I'm a student energy junkie. And so I arrived there. I've been an early adopter of a lot of pedagogies, and this is where I am now. Anyway, the way students are evaluated in the team in the application exercise, if ever a team reporter gets up, remember I've chosen them after the choice has been made. If ever their reporter gets up and says, "I don't know," "Sally knows," or "we just guessed," their whole team loses 1% off their course grade, and up to 10% maximum. So that's a whole grade for the team. And it's been really, since I came upon this, I use a spinny wheel. It's quite a fun game, and students are really into it. It changes the focus of the group work from the best student showing how much they know to making sure that every student is capable of presenting the team's reasoning. And again, there's no wrong answer. There's no points lost for being wrong. Sometimes there's a ridiculous choice up there, but you don't suffer any penalty for getting that wrong. I'll mention that students say, "Oh God, there's multiple right answers. How's this going to be on a test?" Of course, I have taken to creating a study guide that goes through each application exercise and gives students a list of possible essay-type questions, problem-type questions that might be on a test. So that transition from these open-ended, multiple right answers to what's going to be on the test my students have benefited from having a crutch for that. The key to making team-based learning work, actually good applications will make it work for sure. One element of TBL that my best students actually come up and thank me for is there's student accountability built into TBL at every step. Obviously, the quizzes, they're pretty low stakes, but the quizzes at the beginning keep the students motivated. Their scores are a mix between their individual and team scores. Just to give you a sense of the power of that first team discussion, individual averages on my opening quizzes are between 55 and 65%. The team scores are between 90 and 95%. For every class, every semester, every team, the team score is substantially higher than the highest scoring individual on the team. So it's this phenomenon where the sum is quite a bit greater than the parts, and I regularly show those results to students so they can see that. As you all know, we have to convince our students of the importance of active learning. And I will tell you that, especially early on, my student evaluation comments ranged from my favorite, which is, "These teach yourself courses suck ass," literally, that's verbatim, but the other one is, and you get this too, "This is supposed to be an active class, he lectures all the time." And so anyway, it's definitely, there's personnel committee reasons why people are reluctant to adopt active pedagogy, and you learn to manage that. It's a long discussion, but we got to keep it short. Students also evaluate each other formally with questionnaires. Did they come to class on time? Did they come to class? How prepared were each teammate? How much did they contribute to the team in facilitating a productive conversation instead of a vote, in contributing guesses or conjectures about the answers? How did they listen to teammates? Were they respectful? Could they disagree constructively? And there's no teammate evaluation of economic content. I do that. But these teammate evaluations are formal, and they count toward the grade. That's a long conversation to talk about how they count toward the grade, but basically a student could be getting 100% on the individual stuff, which is about 80% of the points in a course. If they get rated below a 7 in my class by their teammates, 7 out of 10, they fail the course. The only thing that causes that low evaluation is, by the way, repeated absence, which teams hate. And those students are failing my course anyway. So I've never had to fail a high-performing, but anyway, it's there, and they respond to that incentive. All right, I'd like to show you what I mean when I talk about a traditional problem versus a TBL application exercise, and then point you towards some resources. I've left handouts on the table, and there's a bookmark that points you toward both the starting point website where innovative pedagogies and economics are gathered, and to our TBL module. This is an application exercise. It could be used as an application exercise anyway. It's a traditional practice problem out of the Frank Bernanke text, which I really like. It's not a Macmillan product, but still, it's pretty good, despite that glaring weakness of not being a Macmillan product, of course. Anyway, what do we ask students to do? We ask them to work with an algebraic supply curve, demand curve, throw in an externality, ask them to compare the outcome. This is a pretty good problem, such as these traditional problems go, but geez, this is a really important issue area. This is a really computational problem, and I don't know what materials you're using, but a lot of what we do has students working on highly computational problem, and is it really any wonder that at graduation time, when you ask them conceptual questions about economics, our majors do hardly better at all than students that haven't taken an economics class. Anyway, you got to move it further. So for on the same unit, one of the applications that I have will have students watch a 7-minute PBS news story on a conflict in Iowa. City of Des Moines was suing a farming association over the nitrate fertilizer used on Iowa farms. And they interviewed households, they interviewed the manager of the Des Moines water utility, they interviewed farmers, and created this context for the problem that I then had students consider, which was this. I want you to notice that one could make a pretty good defense of any of these 4 policy recommendations. And there's a lot when you have students stand up. The teams spend a lot of time getting to the team choice. I have them produce that supply demand with the externality illustrate. I have that produce that to support their answer, and I'm wandering the room to help students understand what I mean when I say that they have to support it with the appropriate graphical analysis. But then when it's time to report, I've got this array of answers. We can talk about costs. We can talk about incentive-based regulation versus command and control. We could talk about fairness. Since this happened a couple years ago, I can actually then reveal in my closing comments how the legal case actually turned out. Anyway, these possibilities are endless. And as Scott was talking about, once you introduce this ethical dimension, then you also produce this platform for students to argue, because we all have different value systems and which one should weigh more, and there's a diversity even within each team and across teams, and you can harness this and motivate the computational and quantitative skills necessary. Just to close, I would hope most of you know about the Starting Point portal. If you don't, it's a great resource for all of us. We've got this team-based learning module. I've circled the link to the application exercises. We have, this reads 120. I've got 5 that I have to put in there post this weekend. By the end of the fall, we should be up to about 200. They're mostly for the intro class. They're searchable on key terms, which can be the topic of that you're teaching. We've got them broadly sorted, as you can see by that top menu, by micro, macro, and then other, usually advanced class topics. That's a resource. I hope you use it. It'll save you. One of the big costs is it takes plenty of time to develop a good application exercise, and sharing them, and please become authors if you're so inclined. Sharing them across everybody teaching active classes hopefully saves us all a lot of work. Thank you.